Welcome to another session in this series. In the previous session, we ended up question number 97. In this session, we start with question number 98. So, in the diagram, MR, the length of MR is equal to the length of MQ. So, this is the same as this, okay? So, that means that these angles will be the same. Because you have an isosceles triangle, right? This will give us an isosceles triangle. These two sides are the same. That means the angles they form at the opposite end will be what? The same. So this angle, if it is x, then this angle will also be what? X. Cool. So let's label that this whole angle is what? X. X. And then this angle is x. Okay. Cool. So now, if we label, now let's move on to, before we label anything else, let's continue reading the question. It says the length of QS is equal to the length of QR. QS and QR are the same. That's what they mean. So if QR and QS are the same, that means the angles they form at the opposite end will be the same. Okay, that means this angle will also be the same as this angle. And we know that this angle is what? X. So if this angle is X, that means this angle is also what? X. Okay, so let's label that also X. Okay, cool. Now, how do you find the value of X? Okay, we've been given this angle here to be 50. So when we add this angle, and this angle, we should get what? 180. Okay, because it is a triangle. The sum of the interior angles of a triangle add up to what? 180. So we can say that x plus 50 should give us 180. Okay, so we will have 2x to be equal to 180 minus 50. 2x equals 130. So when we divide by 2, they cancel out. Okay, we find our x to be 65. So our x here is what? 65. 65. Okay, now the angle we are trying to find is what? MQS. MQS is this angle right here. So let's label that as red. Okay, cool. And then this angle right here, just this one, we label it as yellow. Okay, so let's call that angle yellow angle. Cool. That means that this yellow and this red, when we add it, they should give us what? This blue. Okay, now we already know the blue, which is 65. Now can we find the yellow? Yes, we can find the yellow because this triangle right here, we know two of the angles, so we can find the third angle, which is right here. Okay, so that will be 65 plus 65. Then we take the answer from what? 180. So yellow, so let's call it yellow, is equal to 180 minus 65 minus 65. Okay, and that will give us what? 50. Cool. All right, so what that means is this angle right here is what? 50. Yellow is 50. Now we are trying to find this red angle. Okay, so now when we add this red angle and this yellow, we should get what? The blue, which is 65. Okay, so that means yellow plus red should give us what? Blue. So when we solve that, what do we get? We know the yellow to be what? The yellow is 50, as we solved right here. And then red is what? We don't know. Okay, and then the blue is what? 65. So red will give us 65 minus 50, which is what? 15. So that angle is what? 15, which is A. Cool. All right, let's move on to question number 99. The question says the perpendicular height of an equilateral triangle is 10 centimeters. Find the length of its sides in a set form. So what that means is when we draw an equilateral triangle which has all of its sides to be the same, the perpendicular height is what? 10. So if we say that each side is called x, we can label that as what? X. Then at the bottom here, this side from 1/2 give us what? X over 2. And then the other half also give us what? X over 2. Because when you add half, you should get what? X, which is 1x, okay? Cool. So we just divide it into 2 because the perpendicular bisector divides them into the same length, okay? Which is x over 2, x over 2. Cool. Now, we can use Pythagoras theorem to find the value of x, okay? Because this is the hypotenuse, the base, and the height, okay? So that means we have x squared will be equal to 10 squared plus x over 2 squared, okay? So when we expand, we have x squared equals 100 plus x squared over 4. Cool. Let's try to group like terms. So we'd have x squared minus x squared over 4 equals 100. So they will give us what? When we have a full x minus a quarter x, we have what? 3/4 x squared, okay? This is x squared, and then we have a quarter of x squared. When we subtract it, we have 3/4 x squared, okay? So we have 3/4 x squared to give us what? 100, okay? Cool. Now when we rearrange it, we can say that it's the same as 100 over 1, right? So over 1. So what this will give us is, when we cross multiply, we have 3x squared equals 4 times 100, which is 400. So let's write it at once. Let's write 400. Okay, now let's divide both sides by 3. So this will cancel this. And then also we can take square root of both sides. After we've cancelled this 3, we'll have x squared equals 400 over 3. So now we take square root of both sides. Square roots of both sides. Now when we take square root of both sides, the square root of 400 is what? 20. And the square root of 3 is what? Root 3. Okay? So we'd have x to be equal to 20 over square root of root 3. Now we can rationalize this by multiplying it by root 3 over root 3. Okay, you should know what rationalization is by now. Okay, cool. But if you don't know that, we'll tackle those when we get to sets. Okay, so rationalization just means you multiply the whole expression by the set base. Okay, so here we have root 3, so we multiply by root 3 over root 3, which is basically 1, right? Because root 3 can cancel root 3, which is 1. Okay, so now if we solve this, we should have our x to be equal to 20 root 3. Sorry, let me write it properly. We have x equals 20 root 3 over 3. Okay, so that will be D. Cool. Right, let's move on to question number 100. The question says, if x is equal to what? A quarter of its complement. What's the complement of x? So the complement of any number is what? 180 minus that number, because the sum of those two numbers should give us what? 180. So when we add x plus 180 minus x, we should get what? 180, because the x will cancel this negative x, then we'll be left with what? 180. Okay, so the complement of x is 180 minus x. Keep that in mind. Now the question says, if x is equal to a quarter of its complement, was I saying complement? No, not complement, supplementary angle. Okay, let's take that again. So everything I said right now is in relation to what? Supplementary angle. The supplement of x, or the supplementary angle of x is what? 180 minus x. Okay, cool. Not complementary, supplementary. All right. So we have, it says x is a quarter of each supplementary angle. What do you have? You have 104. Sorry, not 104. 1 over 4 times the supplementary, which is 180 minus x. Okay, cool. Now we can do cross multiplication. We know that this is the same as x over 1, right? So 1 will multiply this, and then 4 will multiply x. So we have 4x to be equal to what? 180 minus x. If we rearrange, you have 4x plus x to give us what? 180. So 5x equals 180. Let's cancel out by 5. Cancels. So we have our x to be equal to what? That will give us 36. Okay, so our answer is 36, which is C. Cool. Let's move on to question number 101. It says the interior angles of a hexagon are 2r, 3r, 2r, 5r, r, and 2r. So find the value of r. So we can use the formula of sum of interior angles. Okay, then we can sum these angles that we've been given. But here we know our n is equal to what? 6. Okay, so when we sum it, we have 2r plus 3r plus 2r plus 5r plus r plus 2r. So we should have 186 minus 2 equals, when you add everything, what do you have? You have 2r plus 3r, 5r, 7r, 12r, 13r, 15r. Okay, you have 15r. So that means we have 15r equals 180 times 4. Let's divide both sides by 15. Then we have our r to be equal to, when we cancel this out, we cancel with what? Let's see, we cancel with 3. Okay, 5. Then we have 6. So then we have 6 times 40 over 5, which will give us 6 times 8, right? Because this will cancel this 8 times. Then we'd have what? 48. So our r is 8 to 48. Okay, which is C. Cool. I think we'll have to stop here for now. In the next session, we'll move on to question number 102. Thank you so much for watching. See you again next time.